Apologies that it's been a minute since I released a video on this channel, but I've been spending a lot of time playing Pokemon Legends ZA. And it hasn't been that bad, honestly. I've enjoyed the time I've had it so far. Like I said, I haven't beaten it yet. I have roughly 15 hours of total time spent in the game so far, and I've enjoyed it. And the best thing I can say, it's surprisingly not horrible. And but for what I was hoping for, I was a little underwhelmed. The initial trailers and just reveal footage and stuff was sort of like blueprints, wireframing, and implication being that the city wouldn't be fully developed. It was foundational. We are like expanding and building the city is sort of what the impression was. Very similar to how Pokemon Legends Arceus was. We were sort of expanding, growing the town, not necessarily literally, but we were exploring untamed wilderness for the very first time. And I thought that's kind of what the point was of a Legends game. To tell the story and the history of a given region, not be specifically about entirely the slightly different way the combat works in comparison to the main franchise. That wasn't the only thing that I thought was dividing what a Legends games was and what a traditional Pokemon game was. At this point, very few things separate the two. And now that we know for fairly certain, Legends games are entirely based around the ancient mythology of a given region, it kind of makes it feel a little bit more hollow. The city itself isn't horrible, it looks fine enough. I'm playing the Switch 2 version, and graphically it holds up quite well, but it's clear that there's still some fundamental issues in how Game Freak develops these games. People have harped on a lot the 2D JPEG windows, and I agree, they look horrible, but when you're moving around and playing the game, it's not super noticeable, and it sucks that a lot of the building interiors aren't something you get to really engage with, but the interiors you do have access to look fantastic, and I can't 100% blame timing. I think they just are fundamentally incapable of making a decent game. That came out more cheery than I was anticipating it for it to be, but I don't think that's a horrible thing though. There could be some sparks of brilliance. The new combat system is a particular standout. I've actually really enjoyed the combat system, and the boss mega evolution mechanics have been a lot of fun. The core combat experience is very good, very reminiscent of those traditional MMOs that you might see, with a whole row of abilities and things that are on timers and cooldowns at the bottom of your screen. It kind of feels something like that, if you're playing like a Pokemon version of League. Granted, I've never played League before, so I don't know how apt that comparison is, but seeing people just spamming the same 4 things over and over again in a real-time setting kind of makes me think of how this new Pokemon battle system sort of functions, and it's really compelling. I really have enjoyed it so far, but there are some minor issues, like Pokemon not being able to attack when they're not on the same plane, but the battle can be engaged while you're on completely different elevations, so you could be spamming one of your attacks and you're just flying over top of the Pokemon, not actually hitting them. That is a little annoying. I wish there was some way to direct the Pokemon, some greater control of where your Pokemon is moving, because entirely running with the AI is a little stupid, and it's not particularly smart, and pathing is not great most of the time. Some external things that I really didn't like was launching the DLC and announcing it right alongside the main game, which makes you think, why didn't you just include it from the beginning? Like, for real, why would you do that? It was clearly planned from the very beginning for this to come out. Why make it a few months wait for this DLC to release? It's frankly ridiculous and stupid. It's like they couldn't just either delay the game an extra month or two for it to release with the DLC simultaneously and, be part of the main game, and not charge people an extra $30 for what will inevitably be just frankly not really worth it. or not tell us about it for a couple months and then do like a shadow drop or something. And honestly, people would love that kind of stuff and they wouldn't be judging it nearly as harshly. It's just some really bad management and PR stuff that the Pokemon Company has been having to deal with because of these just really dumb decisions that they're making. I don't see how somebody could look at that as a plan and be okay with it. It doesn't make any sense to me. You can't justify that level of stupidity. Sure, you might say, oh, they're doing it for the money, but anybody could tell you announcing a $30 DLC before the game has even released. For the game that people don't even know they're gonna like yet, I could tell you without even knowing anything about the game or its DLC, that's probably a bad idea and probably won't go over well with most of the fans. But the unfortunate thing about Pokemon, people will just buy it anyways because it is Pokemon. It is the most profitable franchise on the entire planet. There's no escaping that inevitability of a negative feedback loop. No matter what Pokemon will do, most people will probably hate it, but it doesn't matter because everybody's buying it anyways. And because everybody's buying it, it lets the Pokemon Company see that, oh, it can be bad. Nobody cared. It didn't affect the actual, end of the day, the amount of money we made. It just doesn't matter. So we get to do whatever we want, and they're going to eat it up anyways, irregardless of its quality. Or they're not going to get any actual substantial feedback on it because they're like, oh, sure, you might have some complaints. That might be the minority, but most people didn't care. They really enjoyed it. But when overwhelmingly everybody seems to unanimously dislike major parts of the way this game looks and the way it functions, but it's not going to matter at all. Pokemon rant aside, Legends ZA in an isolated bubble is not the worst Pokemon game we've had, by all means. That crown is firmly placed on the head of Scarlet and Violet, and that is even taking in consideration the Switch 2 update that game got. It is still horrible. Nothing can change my mind that that game is just bad to its very core. Something that I saw that people discovered was the entire map Illuminos was entirely rendered the moment you step outside. Even though you could be like on the clear other side of the city, the smallest detail is still rendered on the other side of the map, which is entirely pointless. The way most modern games render things is that only the things you can see are rendered in at any given moment. So everything behind the player that you can't see, completely unrendered, which, for what some people might think, makes complete sense. Why would you need to render in the smallest detail on the opposite side of the map, far from the player where they're never gonna see it? There really isn't a good reason to do that. Sure, it might be nice to have a seamless, no loading screens kind of environment, but if games like Elden Ring that are drastically more complicated can achieve the same thing without having to render in the entire map at the exact same time, I don't see why Pokemon has to do it. Like, it doesn't make any sense. It is a very archaic form of game development, and I don't even think the original Pokemon games functioned that way. I don't think Pokemon games on the 3DS did that. It is a very smart and normal way to develop a game that only renders in what the player can see, not everything else on the map all at the same time, causing massive performance issues on the devices like the original Switch. Switch 2, it's completely fine, but I've heard complaints that the game doesn't run particularly great on Switch 2. It's rather ugly, in fact. At the end of the day, the game still looks like it's from the PS2 generation. Like, seriously. It just looks like a very nice PS2 game. It looks like it could run on the GameCube just fine. There isn't really anything separating this from Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness on the GameCube. And even still, that game has some amazing, beautiful looking environments that don't really show its age nearly as much as looking at Legends ZA. Sure, the older Pokemon game, lower resolution, but upscaling it to 4K, honestly, most people won't even notice. Most people couldn't even tell that is a 20-year-old game in comparing it against a modern title like ZA. It genuinely would baffle most people to realize it is a 20-plus-year-old game, and it looks no better or worse than a title that released weeks ago. All I'm asking is just some amount of effort actually put into the environment. Because after 15 hours of running around Luminos City, it is a really, really bland environment, and the aesthetic got really old. And the wild areas are barely even wild areas. There isn't really much to it, and as you go through the game, you unlock more wild areas. It's just the same other parts of the city that now have really ugly green neon barriers popping up to sort of corral Pokemon. It looks horrible. It is not well integrated into the rest of the city. I would sort of expect, given what we saw in the original trailers, for these to be areas that are still being developed, still some amount of wilderness, not just a nice gated park or cemetery that's nicely fenced in and has nice paving. It just is a part of the city that is arbitrarily green and has a bunch of Pokemon in it. It doesn't feel like this was originally part of their initial design. From the very beginning, it feels very kind of slapped together. Like, we had a different idea of how this game was going to work when we made that trailer, and as we got further into development, we realized we can't make that game, so we made a different game and just try to throw in those ideas at the very last second to make it sort of feel like it was all the plan from the beginning. And that just feels horrible. The only saving grace is the new combat. That is what has gotten me through the game so far, and it's very enjoyable, but it's still not amazing. It's not good. It's not horrible. It's just okay. I'm gonna beat it. I'm probably never gonna touch it again once I beat it, which is sad and unfortunate. I've never been the kind of Pokemon player that fills up his Pokedex, that fills and gets a ton of shinies and does all the hunting. I don't care. Once I beat the game, I get all my gym badges. I got all the Pokemon that I want. I got the final legendary guy. I'm done. I move my Pokemon into Pokemon Bank, and then I sort of forget about it. Occasionally, I go back to replay the games, but I don't go back and replay the newest game. I go back and replay Pokemon Heart Gold. I played Pokemon Black and White 2. My original Switch died a few months before the release of the Switch 2. And when I got the Switch 2, I took it as an opportunity to replay a bunch of my Pokemon games that did not have cloud saves, which, out of all my games, the only games that did not have cloud saves were the Pokemon games, which was super sad. I lost a ton of Pokemon, like my very first shinies, which was very sad. But regardless of that, I got a chance to replay all the Pokemon games on Switch 2. Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, not nearly as bad as I remember it being. It is just the 7 out of 10. Very pretty looking game though, I would give it that. It is probably the best looking Pokemon game we've had so far on Switch. Pokemon Sword and Shield, I think that game gets way more shit than it deserves. I think it's very fine, it's generic as all hell, but when it comes to the other mainline games on Switch, could have been worse. It seriously could have been worse. 7 out of 10. When it comes to Pokemon Snap, fun game. I didn't beat it because I don't really consider it a mainline game, obviously, but it's a very pretty game. It's very fun. 8 out of 10. Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, that game looks horrible, feels horrible, plays okay. 5 out of 10. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, looks horrible, plays horrible, don't like the way it looks, is bad from the very beginning. Pokemon are stupid in it, don't like the new Pokemon. 3 out of 10. Arceus, looks horrible, feels really good, combat, gameplay, story, all very good. 8 out of 10. That was just a quick summation of my thoughts of the other Pokemon games to give you sort of an idea where my head is when I talk about ZA. ZA is the most 7 out of 10 milquetoast, lame duck of a Pokemon game we've got so far. It clearly was an attempt on them to make something that the fans will actually like. And there's so many things you could have done to actually make Luminos very interesting. The entire Kalos region is full of so much rich and deep characters and designs and philosophies. It would have been amazing to explore greater parts of that region, exploring their ancient history, exploring the past that could be so freaking cool. But instead, we get essentially modern day, weird parkour exploring through a dead city of a bunch of dead-eyed NPCs that do literally nothing except pop in and out of life itself, and a story that is frankly so utterly boring that I have barely paid attention to it, spamming my A button to get me out of that conversation as fast as humanly possible. With a game with so much freaking dialogue, you seriously need to invest in some fucking voice acting. I swear to God, this game is so freaking boring when you start talking to people. It takes forever for any conversation to finish, and you don't even really care what they're talking about. I'm not even asking for massive, amazing pre-rendered cutscenes. I'm just asking for the most basic amount of conversations to have some amount of voice acting, or give us the ability, like in Persona 5, to hit a fast forward button at the very least, because I don't want to spend friggin' 5 minutes spamming my A or B button to get through a conversation, because you didn't take the time to at all summarize this shit with any amount of effort, or get some random person off the street to read it to me. The Pokemon Company makes so much more money that you don't even truly understand. You could compare it to some smaller countries in their GDPs, and they get absolutely dwarfed by the Pokemon Company. It is ridiculous the amount of money they make, and they put zero of it back into the games. The thing that actually makes the cards, where all the ideas come from. It is utterly disappointing that they haven't even attempted to have any amount of voice acting in this game. This ended up being way more negative than I intended it to be. The game itself, like I said, it's fine. It's just the small things that a longtime fan like myself have always wanted in a Pokemon game still haven't happened. I've been playing these games since I was 5 years old, and I've always wanted to play the Pokemon games that felt like watching the anime, and this is the closest we've ever gotten to that. But there's still some core things missing from this experience to really get it all the way to the finish line. I don't even think that if they went with that original idea I had in my head of what this could be, it would have satisfied me. If it still was this almost perfect combat system, if it was this almost perfect fidelity that they have graphically with this game, if it wasn't just also always so close to being good, it just ends up falling short in almost every single way. So it gets a 7. It's not horrible. It's not the worst Pokemon game I've ever played. It's just okay. It's there now, and people are going to spend their money and gobble this up, and the Pokemon Company are going to see that and be, okay, we don't need to try nearly as hard. If you made it this far into the video, I just want to say thank you. This was relatively unorganized in terms of what I'm talking about, and it leaned far more negative than I had intended. I do genuinely think the game is just okay, and I don't think that really came across through the entirety of the video. I went very far into my problems with it, but I think that just shows how much I'm dedicated to the Pokemon franchise. I love it a lot, and I just want it to be better. I would love to hear what you guys think about this down below. Are you buying Legends ZA? Have you played it, and do you actually like it a lot? I would love to hear what you guys think about this down below. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. All the other social media garbage down below. And last but not least, have a wonderful day.